This 4-year-old homeless girl saves a millionaire from a motorcycle gang ambush. But when everyone thinks it's safe, something worse and more terrifying happens. Rate my story from 0 to 10. Your opinion is very important, and subscribe to my channel to support my work. I'm counting on your help. The scream sliced through the muggy morning air of a small town in upstate New York like a blade, echoing through the brick-paved streets. Jake Montgomery, 30, almost dropped the keys to his black BMW as he prepared to get into the car. His impeccable appearance, perfectly coiffed hair, a bespoke Italian suit, and a Swiss watch worth more than the annual salary of many town residents, contrasted sharply with the frail figure who had screamed. The girl didn't look more than 2 years old, although she was actually 4. Lily was just skin and bones, her tangled, dirty brown hair framing a gaunt little face marked by hunger. Her torn clothes, an oversized t-shirt and shorts that looked more like rags, hung on her fragile body like an abandoned scarecrow. "Get out of the car! Get out of the car now!" she screamed desperately, running towards Jake with unsteady steps. Jake frowned, irritation rising in his chest. As the owner of the largest construction company in the region, he was used to solving complex engineering problems and managing millions in assets. But panhandlers on the streets always bothered him, especially when they disrupted his morning routine. "Get lost, kid," he said dryly, unlocking the car with the remote. "I don't have any money." But Lily didn't stop. Her big, almond-shaped, desperate eyes locked onto his with an intensity that made him hesitate. There was something in that look that transcended simple begging. It was pure terror. "They're gonna get you. They're gonna get you," she insisted, now crying and tugging at Jake's suit pants with her dirty little hands. That's when Jake heard it. The unmistakable roar of motorcycle engines approaching rapidly, not just one, but several. The sound echoed through the narrow streets of the historic downtown, ricocheting off the colonial facades and creating a menacing symphony. Instinctively, Jake looked up and saw the first motorcycle turning the corner. The rider wore a full-face helmet and dark clothes. Right behind him, 3 more motorcycles appeared, forming a line that completely blocked the street. Jake's heart pounded. He had amassed a considerable fortune over the years, building an empire based on lucrative contracts and smart investments in stocks that paid substantial dividends. His wealth was no secret in the small town, and that made him an obvious target. "My God," he murmured, finally understanding the gravity of the situation. Lily pulled his hand with surprising strength for someone so small. "Deli! Deli!" she screamed, pointing to a small establishment across the street. Jake didn't have time to think. The bikers were approaching rapidly, and something about the way they moved in coordinated formation screamed professional danger. Without questioning, he picked up Lily. She was so light she seemed made of air and ran. His Italian dress shoes slipped on the damp asphalt as he ran across the street. Behind him, he heard the roar of the motorcycles accelerating, male voices shouting orders that the wind carried away before he could understand. The owner of the deli, old Mr. Henderson, a 60-year-old with a grey mustache, saw the scene through the window and immediately unlocked the door. Get in quick," he shouted, making desperate gestures. Jake threw himself through the door with Lily still in his arms, and Mr. Henderson immediately locked the entrance, lowering the metal shutters partially. Through the slits, they could see the 4 motorcycles stopping exactly where the BMW was parked. "They knew where you'd be," Lily whispered, her small voice trembling against Jake's chest. "I heard them talking in the alley. They said they were going to get the rich guy in the black car." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. He watched through the crack as the hooded men got off the bikes and surrounded his BMW. One of them kicked the tire with frustration when they realized their target had escaped. "How did you know?" Jake asked Lily, finally paying real attention to the girl who had just saved his life. Lily's eyes filled with tears. "I sleep in the alley sometimes, when it's really cold. I heard them talking last night. They talked about the rich man who always leaves his house at 8:30 in the morning in the black car." The accuracy of the information chilled Jake's blood. Someone had studied his routine meticulously. Someone who knew his intimate habits well enough to plan a kidnapping. Mr. Henderson offered a glass of water to Lily, who drank it avidly, as if she hadn't seen clean water in days. "This girl's been living on the streets for months," he explained quietly to Jake. "Her mother disappeared. Nobody knows where she went." "What's your name?" Jake asked, crouching down to be at the girl's level. "Lily," she replied timidly, wiping her nose on her torn sleeve. "Lily, you saved me," Jake said, his voice filled with an emotion he hadn't felt in years. "You really saved me." For the first time, a weak smile appeared on the girl's dirty face. But it lasted only seconds before terror returned to her eyes. "They're still out there," she whispered, "and now they know I helped you." 3 hours passed before the motorcycles finally left, leaving only the distant echo of their engines and a sense of danger that hung in the air like toxic smoke. Jake had used this time to make urgent calls, cancelling meetings and reorganizing his day, while watching Lily devour 2 donuts that Mr. Henderson had offered. "You need to go to a safe place," Jake said, putting his cell phone in his pocket. "You can't stay on the streets, not after what happened today." Lily lowered her eyes, nervously playing with the crumbs on the counter. "There's no safe place for me. I've tried before." "What do you mean, you've tried before?" The girl hesitated, as if deciding how much of the truth she could reveal. "My mom, she left me with a family, but they weren't good. They made me work too hard and hit me when I cried. I ran away 2 months ago." Jake felt a pang in his chest. At 30, he had built an enviable fortune through careful investments and lucrative contracts. But he had never truly worried about the suffering of others. He had grown up without a father, raised by a distant mother who worked 3 jobs to support the family, and he had developed an emotional armor that protected him from deep connections. "I'm going to take you to the municipal shelter," he decided. "You'll be safe there." "No!" Lily screamed, her eyes filling with panic. "They'll give me back to the bad family. They always do." At that moment, Mr. Henderson approached with a worried expression. "Jake, there's a woman out here asking about you two. Says she's a social worker." Through the partially covered window, they could see a woman of about 28, her brown hair pulled back in a practical bun, wearing a blue blouse and carrying a leather briefcase. Her face had a professional seriousness, but there was something in her eyes that suggested a deep personal pain. "Someone must have called about the situation," Jake murmured, unlocking the door. The woman entered with determined steps, but stopped abruptly when she saw Lily huddled behind the counter. "My name is Marissa Alvarez," she said, addressing Jake first. "I'm a social worker with the city. We received a report about a child at risk on the street." Jake immediately noticed the way Marissa looked at Lily. It wasn't just professional concern, but something more intense, almost maternal. There was an urgency in her movements that transcended protocol. "The girl helped me today," Jake explained. "She warned me about—" "I know about the incident," Marissa interrupted, crouching down to be at Lily's level. "Hi, honey. How are you feeling?" Lily hid even further behind Jake, clinging to his suit pants. To everyone's surprise, she whispered, "I only talked to him." Marissa frowned. "Lily, I need to talk to you. It's my job to make sure you're safe." "I won't!" the girl screamed, starting to cry. "He's good." "He doesn't hurt me." Marissa's emotional reaction was immediate and disconcerting. Her hands trembled slightly, and she needed a few seconds to regain her professional composure. Jake realized that there was something personal in that reaction. "Miss Alvarez," he said carefully, "can I speak with you in private?" They moved a few feet away, leaving Lily with Mr. Henderson, who began showing her comic books to distract her. "She has selective mutism," Marissa explained in a low voice. "It's common in children who have suffered severe abuse. They choose one person they consider safe and reject everyone else." "And what does that mean?" "It means she's going to need a lot of time and specialized care to trust other people again." Marissa paused, her eyes filling with tears that she quickly contained. It means that separating you now could cause more trauma. Jake studied Marissa's face. You have personal experience with this, don't you? The question hit Marissa like a punch. She turned her face away, but not before Jake saw a deep pain cross her features. I lost my daughter 2 years ago, she whispered. She was the same age as Lily when the accident happened. The silence that followed was heavy with shared pain. Jake finally understood why Marissa had reacted so intensely to Lily's situation. That's why you care so much, he said gently. That's why I can't fail her, Marissa corrected, regaining her professional posture. Mr. Montgomery, I need to be honest. Normally, a child on the street would be taken to a shelter immediately, but Lily's psychological state complicates things. What are you suggesting? That maybe you could be part of the solution, Marissa said reluctantly. At least temporarily, until she gets used to other people. At that moment, Lily ran to them, interrupting the conversation. Mr. Jake, she said, pulling his hand, are you going to leave and leave me alone? The simple question hit Jake more deeply than any business negotiation ever had. He looked into those big, frightened eyes, remembering his own lonely childhood, the nights he waited for a father who never came home. No, he heard himself saying before he even fully processed the decision. I'm not going to leave you alone. Marissa nodded slowly. Then we're going to need to talk about temporary custody. It's a complex process, especially considering that you're single and have no experience with children. What are the obstacles? First, your financial situation will be thoroughly investigated. Second, you'll need to undergo psychological evaluation. Third, the house where Lily will live must be approved by social services. Jake nodded, but a concern grew in his chest. In recent months, his company had faced some problems with late contracts and questionable suppliers. Nothing serious, but enough to complicate a financial investigation. What if there are problems with the investigation? He asked. Then Lily will go to a shelter until we find a suitable family, Marissa replied firmly. No! Lily screamed, who had overheard the conversation. I don't want to go to another bad place. At that moment, Jake's cell phone rang. It was John Sanders, his accountant, and his tone of voice was full of urgency. Jake, you need to come to the office now. We have a serious problem with the audit. They found irregularities in the contracts for the shopping mall project. Jake's blood ran cold. The shopping mall project represented 40% of his annual revenue, and any irregularities could destroy not only his profits, but his reputation. What kind of irregularities? He asked, moving away from Lily and Marissa. Overpriced materials, dubious invoices, phantom employees on the payroll. Jake, this could ruin the company. Jake hung up the phone, his hands trembling. In a matter of hours, his life had completely transformed. Now he not only had a traumatized child depending on him, but his source of income was threatened. Problem? Marissa asked, noticing his paleness. It could be, he replied vaguely, looking at Lily, who was playing with a toy car that Mr. Henderson had given her. What he didn't know was that the problems were just beginning, and that the girl who had saved his life was about to reveal secrets that would connect his business past with the trauma she carried. 2 weeks had passed since the day of the thwarted kidnapping, and Jake's life had become a controlled chaos of visits to the temporary shelter where Lily was staying, meetings with lawyers about his company in crisis, and endless sessions with Marissa discussing the requirements for custody. Jake's mansion, with its 5 bedrooms and pool overlooking the mountains, had become a silent museum of his old life. Now, he spent most of his time at the small municipal shelter, a 2-story building painted peeling yellow, where Lily shared a room with 3 other children. She only talks when you're present, explained Sister Agnes, the director of the shelter, a 55-year-old woman with grey hair and hands calloused from decades of caring for abandoned children. With anyone else, including me, she remains completely silent. Jake watched through the window Lily playing alone in the small yard, building little houses with pebbles while humming a song softly. The same melody she repeated constantly, a song he had never heard before. "The trauma is deeper than we imagined," said Marissa, sitting next to him in the small meeting room. "I talked to other social workers in the area. Lily is not just an abandoned child. She was sold." The word sold echoed in the air like a gunshot. Jake turned sharply to Marissa. Sold? Her mother, Carol Miller, was a drug addict. 6 months ago, she sold Lily to a family who used her as domestic help. The girl worked from 5 in the morning until late at night, without rest, without proper food. Jake felt nauseous. "How did you find this out?" "A neighbor of the family reported it anonymously. When social services arrived at the house, Lily had already run away. That's when she started living on the streets." At that moment, Lily appeared at the door of the room, her big eyes searching for Jake. "Are you going to leave?" she asked with her frail little voice. "No, honey. I'm here," he replied, opening his arms to her. Lily ran and snuggled into his lap, a gesture that had already become natural for both of them. But this time she whispered something that made Jake's blood run cold. "Mr. Jake, I know the men on the motorcycles." Marissa straightened up immediately. "What do you mean, you know them?" Lily looked nervously between the two adults before continuing. "One of them, he used to work at your company, the big man with a scar on his hand. He always yelled at the other workers." Jake frowned. "Are you sure?" "Yes. He went to the house where I used to live. He talked to the bad man who was in charge of me. They talked about money you owed." The pieces of a terrible puzzle began to fit together in Jake's mind. The audit at his company had revealed not only overpricing, but a complex scheme where some employees were diverting construction materials to resell. He had fired 12 people the week before, including Ron Sanders, a construction foreman with a deep scar on his right hand. "Marissa," he said urgently, "I need to make a call." Jake left the room and immediately called John, his accountant. "John, about the employees we fired last week, do you have Ron Sanders' address?" "I do. Why?" "Send it to me by text. And John, gather all the documentation about the diversion of materials. I want to know exactly how much money was stolen." When he returned to the room, he found Lily drawing on a piece of paper while Marissa watched with growing concern. "Jake, look at this," Marissa said, showing him the drawing. It was a childish drawing, but the details were disturbing. Lily had drawn a house with stick figures, a little girl carrying heavy buckets, a big man shouting, and in the corner of the paper, 4 motorcycles. "Lily," Jake said carefully, "the big man from your house, was his name Ron?" The girl nodded vigorously. "Ron was very mean. He hit Carol when she cried for me. He said he had paid a lot of money, and I had to work to pay it back." The revelation hit Jake like a hammer. Ron Sanders wasn't just a dishonest employee, he was involved in child trafficking. And now, fired and desperate, he had decided to take revenge through a kidnapping. "There's more," Lily whispered. "Ron said you had a lot of money saved in bitcoins, that he was going to take it all from you." Jake froze. This information was not public. Only a few people knew about his cryptocurrency investments, an emergency reserve he kept in secret digital wallets. How could Ron know? At that moment, his cell phone rang. It was an unknown number. "Jake Montgomery?" said a rough male voice. "Who is this?" "Someone who has something you want, or rather someone you want." Jake's blood ran cold. "What do you want?" $500,000 in Bitcoin. Transfer tonight, otherwise the person you're looking for so much will disappear forever." "What person? What are you talking about?" "Carol Miller, the mother of your little protégé. She's here with me and she's not in very good shape." The call was cut off, leaving Jake stunned. Marissa, who had heard part of the conversation, was pale. "Was it about Lily's mother?" she asked. Before Jake could answer, Lily began to cry desperately. Mommy! They have my mommy! I heard Ron's voice on the phone. The situation had escalated to a completely new level of danger. It was no longer just about a traumatized child needing care. Now there was a kidnapped woman, blackmail involving huge sums of money, and criminals who knew intimate details of Jake's financial life. "Marissa," he said with a trembling voice, "I need to make a decision. If I don't pay, they're going to kill Lily's mother. If I pay, I'll be financing criminals and possibly putting other people in danger. What if we call the police?" "You heard what Lily said. Ron has information about my investments that only very close people know. There may be more people involved, people I trusted." Lily clung tighter to his neck. "Mr. Jake, are you going to save my mommy?" The simple question carried the weight of the world. Jake looked into those trusting eyes and knew that there was no real choice. But at the same time, part of him knew that paying the ransom would only be the beginning of a downward spiral that could destroy everything he had built. His fortune, accumulated through years of hard work and careful investments, was about to be used to negotiate with criminals. And worst of all, he was beginning to suspect that someone very close had betrayed his trust, providing personal information to the kidnappers. The question that haunted him was, who else was involved in this nightmare, and how far would they be willing to go to get what they wanted? Night fell on the small town like a heavy blanket of uncertainties. Jake was in his office, surrounded by financial documents scattered across the table, calculating how much of his assets he could quickly liquidate. His stock market investments, which were once a source of pride, had now become his only hope of raising the money demanded by the criminals. Marissa remained at his side, holding Lily, who had flatly refused to return to the shelter. The girl alternated between periods of absolute silence and crying spells, always asking about her mother. "I managed to raise $400,000, Jake said, closing the laptop. "I sold all the stocks, I had immediate liquidity and transferred part of the bitcoins, but I'm still 100,000 short of what they're asking." "What if we offer what we have?" suggested Marissa. "Maybe they'll accept." At that moment, the phone rang again. Jake answered on speakerphone. "Do you have the money?" asked the same rough voice. "I have 400,000. That's all I could raise so quickly." A cruel laugh echoed through the speaker. "It's not enough, Montgomery. 500,000 or the woman dies." "Wait!" Jake shouted. "I need more time. 2 more days and I can get the rest." "You don't understand the situation. It's not just Ron and me here. There are more people involved. People you know well." Jake's heart pounded. "Who?" "Your dear accountant, John Sanders. Who do you think gave us all the information about your cryptocurrency investments, about your morning routine, about where you keep your most important documents?" The betrayal hit Jake like a punch in the stomach. John Sanders had been his right-hand man for 5 years, the man who knew every detail of his financial life, who had access to his bank accounts and knew his security codes. "John," he murmured, feeling the world crumble around him. "Surprise? And there's more news. Little Lily there by your side? She knows where her mother hid something very valuable before being caught by us. Something that's worth much more than $500,000. Marissa and Jake looked at Lily, who had turned completely pale. "I won't talk," the girl shouted. "I won't tell where Mommy hid it." "Hid what?" Jake asked gently, crouching down next to her. Lily looked around nervously before whispering, "Mommy took money from Ron before he sold me. A lot of money. She said it was for me, for my future. She hid it in a box under the big tree in the park." The voice on the phone laughed again. "Hear that, Montgomery? The junkie was smarter than we thought. She stole almost $1 million in cash before disappearing. Money that was ours from the business we do." "What kind of business?" Jake asked, although he already suspected the answer. "Children. We buy and sell children to families who need cheap labor. A very profitable business, until your little protected daughter here ruined everything by running away." Jake felt nauseous. The scheme was much bigger than he had imagined. It wasn't just dishonest employees stealing construction material. It was a human trafficking network using his company as a front. "So, here's the new proposal," the voice continued. "The girl tells us where our money is hidden. We return her mother, and everyone is happy. Otherwise..." The call was interrupted by a female scream in the background, clearly Carol being hurt. "Mommy!" Lily cried desperately. Jake made a decision. "Lily, where exactly did your mother hide the money?" "Under the maple tree in the center of the park. She dug a deep hole and put it in a metal box." Marissa grabbed Jake's arm. "You can't hand over a child to these criminals." "I'm not going to hand her over. I'm going to get the money myself." "It's an obvious trap." "Maybe. But it's the only chance to save her mother." 2 hours later, Jake was in the municipal park with a borrowed shovel, digging under the largest maple tree. Marissa had stayed with Lily in a safe place, but insisted on keeping in touch by phone every 15 minutes. The metal box was exactly where Lily had said. It weighed a lot, at least 40 pounds of bills of different denominations, tied in organized bundles. Jake estimated that there were at least $800,000 there. When he arrived at the designated location for the exchange, an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town, he found not only Ron and 2 accomplices, but also John, his accountant, trying to avoid his gaze. "John," Jake said with a voice full of disappointment. "Why?" "You never really valued me," John replied defensively. 5 years taking care of your money, watching you get richer and richer while I got scraps. I paid you a fair salary." "Fair?" John shouted. "You earned in dividends in 1 month what I earned in a year. When Ron approached me with the proposal, I saw an opportunity to finally have my share." Carol was tied to a chair, visibly hurt but alive. At 26, it was possible to see that she had once been beautiful, but the drugs and the abuse had taken their toll. Even so, her eyes lit up when she saw Jake. You're the man who's taking care of my Lily," she said with a hoarse voice. "I am, and I came to take you back to her." Ron examined the contents of the box and smiled with satisfaction. "Finally, our money back. Now let her go," Jake demanded. Sure, said Ron, untying the ropes. "Deal." But when Carol got up, she staggered and fell. She was too weak, clearly ill. "What did you do to her?" Jake shouted. "Nothing much. Just a few days without proper food and, well, she wasn't very healthy when we found her." Jake carried Carol to the car, feeling how she was too light, feverish. During the drive to the hospital, she grabbed his hand. "Lily, is she okay?" "She is. She's safe and cared for." I wasn't a good mother," she whispered, tears running down her bruised face. "The drugs. I chose the drugs instead of her. When I realized it, it was too late." "It's never too late," Jake said, but he knew he was lying. Carol was seriously ill, possibly dying. At the hospital, the doctors confirmed his worst fears. Carol had advanced hepatitis and severe malnutrition, maybe a few weeks to live, at most a few months. During the 3 days that Carol was hospitalized before passing away, Lily spent every possible moment by her mother's side. They talked, cried together, and Carol asked for forgiveness countless times. "Are you going to take care of her?" Carol asked Jake in the last conversation they had. "I will. I promise." "And you're going to teach her that not everyone is bad? That there are good people in the world?" "I will teach her." 6 months later, Jake was sitting in the garden of his new house, smaller than the previous mansion, but cozy and full of life. Lily was playing with dolls on the lawn, laughing loudly for the first time since he had met her. Marissa approached with 2 glasses of lemonade, sitting next to him. During the months of adoption process and therapy for Lily, she and Jake had grown closer, discovering that they shared not only love for the girl, but a mutual understanding about pain, loss, and redemption. "How's business?" she asked. "Rebuilding slowly," Jake replied. "I lost a lot of money. The company almost went bankrupt, but I got some small contracts. I'm not a millionaire anymore, but we have enough." And Lily? Jake looked at the girl, who was now chasing a butterfly, her laughter echoing through the garden. She's learning to trust again. Not just me, but people, life. And you? Did you learn anything? Jake smiled, a genuine peace on his face for the first time in years. I learned that money, assets, wealth, none of that means anything if you don't have someone to share it with. I learned that sometimes we lose everything to find what really matters. Lily ran to them, climbing into Jake's lap. Daddy Jake, is Aunt Marissa staying for dinner? If she wants to, he replied, looking at Marissa with affection. Of course I am, honey, said Marissa, kissing the top of Lily's head. As the sun set over the mountains, the three hugged in the garden. Jake had lost his fortune, but gained a family. Lily had lost her biological mother, but found unconditional love. Marissa had lost her daughter, but discovered that she was still capable of loving and being loved. Sometimes the greatest treasure we can find is hidden in pain, transformed into love, in suffering that teaches us compassion, in loss that shows us the true value of what really matters. And in that small town in upstate New York, three wounded hearts found healing in each other, proving that family is not just blood, it's choice, it's care, it's love that grows even in the midst of the most difficult circumstances. If you enjoyed this wonderful story, please comment giving a rating from 0 to 10. Your opinion is very important, and if you love beautiful stories, subscribe to my channel. I promise to make your day better with my videos.